Welcome to the Leadership Purpose with Robin podcast. I'm your host, Robin L. Owens, Ph.D. And this is where we dive in each week to give advice, tools, and tips for high-achieving women leaders. And we talk about leadership purpose and its importance for you. I am a college professor, and when I am not doing that, I am speaking, writing, coaching, mentoring, and teaching high-achieving women leaders how to find, and not only find, but how to stay in alignment with their leadership purpose so they can make a meaningful difference right there in their career, leadership, or business. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin. I'm so glad you're here. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about what to do when you feel stuck. Sally Helgesen, women's leadership expert and author of the book, How Women Rise, says she spent decades working with women leaders all over the world. And she said there's one thing that's true today as it was a generation ago. She said, women often start to feel stuck when they've reached a certain level of success. So today I want to talk about if you're feeling stuck or even empty or unfulfilled in your leadership, then it's time to turn your attention to or back to your zone of genius, because it's the number one key to discovering your leadership purpose. And acting in alignment with your leadership purpose will help you get unstuck. It will take you from feeling, I just don't know what to do, to knowing the next right step to take. Now, as I've done in the past, I've shared a story from my own experience to encourage you, but to illustrate the point that we're talking about. And so I'll do that, share a story about my experience to help you think about how to get unstuck and moving forward. Okay, so here's the story. Robin, your house is on fire. These are the words of a little boy from my neighborhood where I grew up. And I was coming home from the mall with a friend, and we were about 2 blocks away from the house. She was driving, and the little boy kind of saw the car and kind of ran up to the car. Robin, your house is on fire. And as we didn't know what he was talking about, and as we drove a little bit further, now about a block away, could see the flames from a block away, just towering over the other houses in the neighborhood. So he jumped out the car because the street was blocked off. He couldn't drive down any further. Ran down the street. So many people standing on the corner, just looking at the house up in flames. The fire department had already arrived, and they were doing their best to put the fire out. I started going through the crowd looking for my mother. And at this time, I was about 22 years old. I was looking for my mother in the crowd, just going through, trying to make sure she's okay. Is she alive? Is she alive? And had she gotten out? And so I find her, and we embraced, and I was just so grateful that she made it out safely. And everyone had made it out safely. There in the crowd were my sister and my cousins we all lived in this 3-family house together. And they were crying and screaming and was just distraught. Didn't know what to do. Just completely engulfed in flames. We knew it was going to be destroyed. There would be nothing left. And so as we were standing there, seemingly out of nowhere, a woman arrived on the scene who said to my mother and me, "Do you have anywhere to go?" And we said, "No." And she said, "I'm from the American Red Cross, and we could help you get settled in the hotel for the night or for a couple nights until you can get settled." And so she took us and we went to a hotel, and we had a safe place for the night and for the coming days. It's interesting to me now to think about this looking back. She just appeared seemingly out of nowhere. She helped us get through. We stayed in the hotel, and eventually we were in a new home. Now, fast forward about 5 years, let's say 5 years. I'm working in a job, a leadership position at a bank. And part of the bank's contribution to a local nonprofit called United Way was the bank would loan one of their employees to United Way for several months, for a certain period of time, as a contribution to United Way. So the program was called a loaned executive program. So many companies in the area would then loan their executives to United Way as a contribution. And those executives would do the work that United Way asked them to do for the months that they were there. And the original company, in my case, the bank, would continue to pay my salary and so forth. But I would just report to United Way and do what they asked me to do. So they asked me and the other loaned executives in this program to go out and, in essence, tell groups in organizations about United Way and to then invite them to make a contribution to United Way through their HR department and through their payroll. And as I learned about United Way, I realized that they supported several nonprofits, and one of them happened to be the American Red Cross. And so when they gave me the organizations that I would go out and talk to, I thought it would be helpful then to share from my own experience about my connection with the American Red Cross through that experience of the fire. So I shared this story and explained to the groups that I had this personal experience and how helpful it was to me, and then asked for their contribution. And lots of people were moved by the story and they gave the contribution. And I did that for the months that I was there in United Way. But as I went along, now this was new. This wasn't part of my regular job. Remember, this was just an aside. But while I was there, I realized, oh my goodness, I absolutely loved going around talking to groups of organizations and just sharing from my experience in a way that I really believe was making a difference in other people's lives. I loved it. Okay, so then it was time to go back to my regular duties at the bank. And I realized that after some time, I realized that I was not fulfilled in the way that I had been doing that work. Now, fast forward to now, looking back, I see that my time doing the work, doing the presentations, talking about my experience really was an aspect of my leadership purpose. My leadership purpose literally rose from the ashes of my experience with that fire. And I found it. And even in the midst of that, I went and got a Ph.D. where I studied how women make meaning in their leadership. So now I found it. I figured it out. I know the components of it. I know how to use it whenever I get stuck to help me move forward. Or if I have that feeling that the work there's just something missing, I know how to do it and to make it work for my life. And I'm not kidding. I wake up every morning looking forward to the work that I have to do every morning. Now, I know, of course, we all have these days, and especially in recent times where we're up and down and there's other things and other challenges of life. But when it comes to my work, I have figured it out. And I created a step-by-step way to help others discover their leadership purpose, which I've been doing over the past couple of years. And not only that, I created a step-by-step way to help them make decisions so they stay in alignment with their leadership purpose. And it is one of the great joys of my life. Okay, so we're talking a lot about leadership purpose. You might be saying, well, what is leadership purpose? And if you go back to the previous episodes, many of our guests give their interpretation, their understanding, their definition of leadership purpose. But I'll tell you mine. To me, leadership purpose is when you express who you really are through your leadership. It's when you express who you really are through your leadership. Your leadership could be in an official capacity, unofficial capacity, but it's when you express who you are. And you might say, well, why is it important to do that? And for our conversation today, because we're talking about what to do when you get stuck, knowing your leadership purpose will help you get unstuck. It's a guide. It'll help you know what to do and how to do it. So you might be saying, well, how do you know? How do I know what my leadership purpose is? And I say, this is where you start. You start by getting in alignment with who you are. You feel stuck because you're not in alignment with who you are. And I could hear you saying, what? Who I am is so abstract. What do you mean? And so you may be like Jennifer Darling. Go back to episode 15 if you hadn't had a chance to listen to that. And Jennifer Darling talks in that episode about her experience. She had success in her career in marketing and sales for a decade. She had received all the promotions, achieved all the accomplishments, and she felt like there was something missing, but she was stuck. She wanted to move forward, but she didn't know how. So you might be feeling like Jennifer in some way, or like, how do I get unstuck? And I say it is to connect again with who you are. And she talked about in that episode about what does that mean? Who am I? I didn't even know that. And so she talks about her struggles with that. That's why I encourage you to go back and listen to that. So you might be asking, well, who am I? What does that mean? And this is what I say. You are someone who is created with natural abilities, abilities that come naturally to you, that are inherent in you, and you were born with them. They're just in you, but you might not even notice them, or you might take them for granted, or you may have paid attention to them in the past, but have lost sight of them now, but they are in you, and they are giving you clues and hints to who you are. You have many of these natural abilities. We all have many, but just start thinking about one. I'll tell you one of mine. One of my natural abilities is to share about my experiences in a way that encourages, inspires, and motivates others to help them get from where they are to where they want to be. So knowing your natural abilities is the number one key to discovering your leadership purpose. Now, another word I use for these natural abilities is zone of genius, activities that fall within your zone of genius. And this is a term that I use from Gay Hendricks, who was a Stanford psychologist who went on to turn leadership expert. And he wrote a book called The Big Leap. And in this book, he wrote several books, but in this book, The Big Leap, he talks about there are activities that we all do and that they fall into 4 categories. And one of those categories is the category of your zone of genius. So we all have these activities in our daily work, and I would say life, but we're talking about work, that fall into the 4 categories. The first zone is the zone of incompetence. And Gay Hendricks talks about the zone of incompetence. Those are the activities that you're really just not good at, right? You do them, but you're not good at them. The second is the zone of competence. And the zone of competence is where you can do it all right, right? You like them all right. They're activities you do all right. You like them all right. And the next one is the zone of excellence. And those are activities that you're really good at. Everybody notices it. You're good at it and you excel in those activities. Other people are good at them too, though, but you excel in those. And the fourth is the zone of genius. The activities that fall within your zone of genius, those are the activities that come to you very naturally and easily for you to do. And you're really good at them. You're excellent, like in the zone of excellence. But beyond that, you're so good at that most people around you are not as good at doing those activities. So those are the activities that fall into your zone of genius. And I say your zone of genius is the number one key to discovering your leadership purpose. Now, leadership expert Bill George says discovering your leadership purpose is important. It's important to your leadership and your work. It's a guide. And he talks about this in his book, Discover Your True North. And he says it's very important to discover your leadership purpose, but it takes some introspect and some reflection on your experience. And I say, especially if you're trying to think through what to do when you feel stuck, I say it's time for your leadership purpose to rise up from the ashes of feeling stuck, to rise up from the ashes of feeling like something is missing, to rise up from the ashes of feeling unfulfilled in your leadership. It's time. It's time for your leadership purpose to rise up. And it starts with unlocking your zone of genius. Now, I'm happy to support you in that. And if you're interested, click on the link below in the show notes for a complimentary strategy session, Unlock Your Zone of Genius. So just click on the link, Unlock Your Zone of Genius strategy session. And the link is robinlowens.com/gift. It's my gift to you, and it is a true strategy session. It's not a sales call, but of course, if you want my continued support, we can discuss that at another time. But in the session, we will identify at least one activity that's in your zone of genius. And you will leave the strategy session with an actual strategy to help you move toward getting from where you are to where you want to be. So click on the link, robinlowens.com/gift. And we can do that. In the meantime, I'm rooting for you. I'm rooting for you as you rise up from the ashes of feeling stuck. All right. This is Dr. Robin, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Leadership Purpose with Robin podcast. If you enjoyed it, head on over and rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. New episodes drop every week, and I can't wait to hang out with you again soon. Meanwhile, this is Robin signing off. See you next time.